So we did start off with a wonderful lab study, and then we did have a clinical presentation on Parkinson's, and now we go into when to the bedside. So an attempt at looking at a pilot study which looked at clinical outcomes by using AF2-202 beta glucan in patients with Parkinson's disease, which is the Dedeepiya study. Now, how did this study actually come across was when you need to understand that the Dedeepiya beta glucan is commercially available and is consumed all over the world, especially in Japan, where it is first discovered. And if you look at the outcome of a survey, a real world experience survey of people who are actually using the beta glucan, among 462 customers, when they were presented with the question and asked what was the primary reason why they were continuing to use Dedeepiya glucan, most of them reported that they found that they felt that there was an improved immunity, they felt well, they felt that whatever disease they were suffering from appeared to be better, needing maybe less medication or just feeling better. And they also significantly said that they felt that their constipation was reduced. And you need to understand that we did bring about this concept of the gut microbe. We need to understand that we do have our own microbe, we do have our own microbiome, and the microbiome connects us to the ecosystem. In fact, the cellular contents that we have within our own cells is the gut microbiome is much more than the cellular content that we do have. So the gut microbiome in fact connects us to the ecosystem. The gut dysbiosis and constipation are interrelated, and we know that constipation is common in children with autism spectrum disorder. And therefore, since the Dedeepiya beta glucan survey response said that in patients who or in people who consumed it, there was a reduction in constipation, it was postulated whether it could be helpful in patients with autism spectrum disorder, and thus began our first study with the use of beta D glucan in patients with autism. This was the concept behind it. Okay, let's now look at the unique features of the Dedeepiya beta glucan. Now, compared to the other beta glucans, which are to be extracted and then purified, Dedeepiya glucan is something that is just has to be fermented in a pain because it is secreted as an exopolysaccharide. So it need not be extracted from within the cell and purified. It is just secreted as an exopolysaccharide, as you can see it here, and therefore it can be just obtained. The source of other beta glucans are varied. It could be from yeast, it could be from mushroom, or it could be a combination of both. But here it is from a specified AF420 strain that produces beta glucan as an exopolysaccharide. Well, the structures of all beta glucans are the same, C6H10O5 times N, but the Dedeepiya beta glucan does have a different structural formula, and you do have scientific papers which says that this particular structural formula confers on it a special effect. Since I told you that it has been secreted as an exopolysaccharide, it actually needs very little purification, but nevertheless, it is produced in GMP facility, certified facilities. Unlike other beta glucans, which are produced in various particular facilities, and in fact, they are very difficult to extract, and there is no standardization of the beta glucan content per gram. But here there is a standardization, and therefore it is like a dose in a drug. You do have an active ingredient that is being mentioned in every gram of the dispensed medication. All beta glucans are not water soluble and not all products are allergen free. Here it is definitely free from any of the notified allergens and it is water soluble and therefore it's very easy to be mixed with food or even consumed with water. So this was our overview of the study that we performed in patients with autism spectrum disorder. The number of participants were 18. It was a 1:2 randomization, which means that 6 patients went into the control arm and 12 of the remaining 18 patients went into the treatment arm. The conventional arm patients continued to receive their treatment along with their remedial behavioral therapy and L-carnosine 500 milligrams per day. And the treatment arm patients, in addition to this, also received the A4202 beta glucan 0.5 grams 2 times per day. The investigations that were undertaken in both the control and the treatment arm were the childhood autism rating scale, CARS assessment scale, the children's sleep habit questionnaire, the plasma alpha synuclein levels, the serum melatonin levels, and the whole genome metagenome sequencing of the fecal gut microbiome. Now, as you can see in the left-hand side here, you find that the CARS score did decrease in patients. The group 1, as you can see, is the control. The group 2 is the one with the beta glucan, and we did find that the behavioral pattern as per the CARS score improved in all the 9 subjects that received the beta glucan, especially on the cognition and the emotional aspects. If you look at the behavioral score as well, you do find that the behavioral score also improved. And the serum melatonin level, as you can correlate and look at the serum melatonin levels, and you also find that the serum melatonin levels increased to a greater extent in the group 2, the one that received the A4202 beta glucan compared to the group 1. And majority of the patients in the A2 beta 2 glucan arm experienced an improvement in the sleep pattern and the quality of sleep. Now let's look at the alpha synuclein levels. You do find that the plasma levels of alpha synuclein were significantly high in patients with the intervention, which is the one who received the A4202 beta glucan in the control group. And that brings us to some very important hypothesis. Why do we find that there is an increase in the plasma alpha cyanide level? We do hypothesize that the gut dysbiosis being corrected, probably instead of misfolded alpha synuclein proteins, normal alpha synuclein is secreted. And we also find that probably the alpha synuclein aggregations are disrupted by the NK cells in the gut and the microbia in the brain, which lead to an increase in the plasma alpha synuclein levels. We are in the process of performing experiments in the neuroblastoma cell lines that we have obtained for Dr. Hegde's lab, which secrete misfolded alpha synuclein. And we are looking with eagerness to see whether the plasma synuclein levels increase and the misfolded alpha synuclein levels decrease when we use the alpha 2. And when we have the results of this study, probably by the next World Parkinson's Day, we may be able to present this particular data. Now, we did tell you that we are looking at the clinical effects and we also are looking at the gut microbiome because the very premise by which we did start the study was by looking at the real world experience. At least 22% of patients who actually took this particular drug said that their constipation was revealed. So we did look at the metagenomic sequence of the gut microbiome. And if you look at it, you do find that in the beta glucan group, there was a reduction in the enterobacterial levels. And among the enterobacterial, we're looking specifically again with Escherichia coli. We also find that the Escherichia coli was also decreased significantly in the group that received the intervention compared to the control group. So at this point of time, we hypothesize and postulate that beta 1316 beta glucans restored gut eubiosis by decreasing the harmful bacteria, which includes Enterobacter C. coli and the rest listed out here, and also increasing the probable beneficial bacteria such as bacteroids and Prevotella corporate. And we also need to also emphasize that the beta glucan activates the NK cell, and it also regenerates the microglial cells in the brain without increasing the inflammation, which helps to clear the deposits in the brain. So we do feel that the misfolded alpha-synuclein and the effects of the beta glucan in reducing this is possibly helping the patients in the autism spectrum disorder to achieve the clinical effects in the small time that we actually perform this particular study. Now, based on this study, we wanted to see whether Parkinson's, which also has an alpha-synuclein as a pathogenetic background to it, showed some similar response. And we did do a very small pilot study, which was an open label single arm. We did enroll 8 patients, but only 5 could complete the study. And this is the data of all the 5 patients who were able to complete the study. As you know, Parkinson's is more prevalent, as you just heard, 3 times more prevalent in men than in women. So all the 5 patients that we could get were men. The youngest was 54, but the remaining were in the age group where we normally see Parkinson's. And you could see the height and weight characteristics on these patients. Yeah. All these patients were given the Nichi bright glucan, 3 grams, produced by the A420 strain of per day for 90 days. And the remaining were continued on the standard care of the physicians. No modification of their existing prescription, whether it was levodopa, dopamine, agonists of other types, or whether they're on any neuronal supplements, maybe the anti-diabetic, the anti-lipid drugs, the hypertension drugs, all were continued as before. They were subjected to the following investigations. They underwent blood biochemistry, lipid profile, the magnetic resonance, specifically looking at Parkinsonism index, the constipation severity scale, unified Parkinson's disease related scale. Now, if you look at the study, you find that the mean unified Parkinson's disease rating scale did decrease in the 90-day interval, but it did not reach significance. The mean constipation did decrease. It just missed significance. If you can look at it, just missed significance. And if you look at the total cholesterol, the total cholesterol and the LDL were decreased. Not much effects on the triglycerides and the VLDL though. The fasting blood sugars were decreased. Likewise, the HbA1c were also decreased in the patients who are at the end of 90 days. And in one of these particular patients, the MRI did show an improvement in the magnetic resonance Parkinson index. In the remaining 4 patients, it showed no major change.